Faith and love starts with faith in you. Know yourself to grow yourself. And discover the DNA of love with Dr. Williams every Wednesday at 4 p.m.
Give love.
What are we talking about today?
So today is the DNA of single parenting in the context of dating, right? So given, I said this to one of the airmen a second ago, I don't have any kids. So what a great topic for me to sort of springboard into. So I want to hit on some of the aspects of single parenting while dating from a literature standpoint, and want to hit into some areas that are possibly helpful or quote unquote best practices for being a single person who's also a parent, who's trying to find love in this interestingly wild world we call Earth. If we can help one person date in a way that's more effective while having kids, and also steering priority on the family system itself, because that's part of being a parent, is like dedicating time to that system, then I would feel like I've earned my money for the day.
So where do we start when we talk about DNA of love for single parents?
Just how difficult it is to date as a single parent. There's specific areas that are like pretty much highlighted in the difficulty realm, and that's mainly the stigma of being a person who has a child and who's single and now trying to pursue love to begin with. I speak on this like when I was on dating apps like years ago. There were like, and I'm saying this like because I am speaking anecdotally, but I saw there were girls who were basically, I typically swiped left on because they were like very aggressively adamantly against, like, if you have a son or a daughter or a child, I'm not interested in being anyone's stepmom. And they would say this on their profiles, like pretty like openly. And also, like, I have friends and basketball players I knew back in California who felt the same way. They saw a friend of mine, he's married now, so I won't say his name, but he talked about, like, if he saw a girl on a dating app that had a picture of a kid, it might not even have been her kid, but if there was a picture of a kid, he was the immediate swipe left. He was completely done. So that stigma alone exists, and anyone who has kids and who's been trying to date, they likely have encountered it in some way, shape, or form.
And I think it does pose some nostalgia because it's not just dating for you, but you're also, hey, this kid is part of my life. There's no changing that. And thinking of this episode of Boy Meets World, where the kid right after high school, he ends up dating this woman with a kid.
I remember that. Eric.
And Eric, he was like, fresh out of high school. He wasn't in college, and he was just like, oh yeah, I think I can do this. And, as the episode progressed, you realize, he's still a kid. He's not ready to, be in charge of a small child.
For sure. And being a dad or a mom, like, in any capacity is a hard thing, because you said, like, perfectly that you cannot turn it off. Like, this is your life. This is your existence, and the existence, and the child didn't choose to be here. So they're just along for the ride by virtue of having a heartbeat. And as a parent, it's on you to be able to navigate being that parent for that child still, but also, like, finding love for yourself so your quality of life maintains what it is. And that presents a host of logistical concerns too. Like, even something as novel as like daycare.
Yep.
Like, you're going to go on a date, let's say, like, let's hypothetically speaking, it's a 6 o'clock date. So not too late, but it's later in the evening, and it's on a Friday or Saturday. So there is no school, and there's potentially, if you're in a place like Italy, like, there's very few places that speak English that will basically present child caring options for your kid while you're away for this day. And then if they do, like, present those options, how late can you stay out? Like, if I'm also in a place like Italy, I'm driving 25-30 minutes already to get to wherever I'm going. So even if I'm staying out till 8, which is already a super tight window, I can only be there for 30 minutes because I got to drive back and make sure I'm there in time to pick up my kid, in theory, hypothetically speaking. So that aspect of it logistically for time is hard. But then you throw in the financial component too, where if I'm a single parent, I'm eating for two and I'm paying for two. Now I'm also trying to throw in dating on top of that is very, very tough.
Yeah, and with a lot of people who have kids, they know that you don't get sick days as a parent.
No.
And it can be like a simple thing. You can try to, get everything planned, but life is unexpected and sometimes things happen and sometimes dates have to get cut short, and that could be turn off for a lot of people. But I think that's a big portion for, parents dating is, setting that expectation from the beginning. Hey, I have kids. My kids come first.
Yeah.
And that can be hard for some people to accept.
True, and or to deliver. Like expectation management is twofold in the context of expectation management for your child, that not every person you bring into your romantic life is going to be a parental figure, not at least right away. And this is a conversation dependent on the developmental stages of your child is something that needs to be had. If you don't ever discuss it, then you have a child who has no framework of life and existence other than what they see. And they see a new person just in the picture. Just around doing stuff. Who you ever heard of Nathan For You? Yeah, he had the show The Rehearsal.
Yeah.
You ever watch it?
I never watched it, but I've heard of it. Okay,
so I don't want to spoil anything for anyone listening, but there was a scene in the show where he was pretending to be the child's dad. And the child was like 6, and he was doing a really good job. And it was a child's quote-unquote actor. Questionable whether this is acceptable or not to do this to a child. At least for me, I was like, this is nuts. That a person would actually let their child, as an actor, pretend to let another strange man be their dad. But he did, and the moral of the episode was he found it, it became more real than he wanted it to right away. And the only reason it became that real is because for the young boy, that was really dad for the moment. And it stuck with that child, and then disconnecting and disengaging was difficult and caused some emotional distress for that kid. So you got to manage the expectations of your own kids if you're going to be a person who's single and dating, but also the expectation of the people you're dating, being honest, not pretending to be single and free and wild when you got a baby at home.
And I think you also, just in that story, makes me think my sister, she was a single parent. And I remember my nephew just clinging on to male role models. His dad wasn't around, so he was looking for grandpa or uncle.
Yeah.
And so any person that comes into that life, kids tend to want to imitate.
Yeah.
It didn't matter who was coming in. If it was a male figure, my nephew automatically would start imitating him. So...
And you see it all the time. I was on a date, not even a date. There's a girl that I was dating. It was maybe 2 or 3 dates. I knew her well enough to go to her house, and I knew she had kids. But whenever I went to her house, the kids weren't around. I never asked any questions. I was young, as far as I was concerned, at least. And this is to the context of expectation management for the single person who's not the parent of kids. Me in this scenario. I was like, she has kids, but that's her and her baby daddy's concern. For me, I'm just doing my thing. We're hanging out, we're watching movies, we're watching TV shows, we're going on dates, we're enjoying ourselves. And then one day, I was at her house, went to use the bathroom. I didn't know her kids were in the house. They were just really, really ghostly quiet. And I came out of the bathroom, and the mom was I forgot where she was. She was somewhere else. It was a nice house, but she was far enough away where I could hear her, but she couldn't see me. And I come out to the bathroom, and the 4-year-old, he's a little boy, and he's just looking up at me, smiling, going, "Hey." And I remember thinking, I think I'm a nice guy. I think I'm a safe guy. But if I was not a nice guy or not a safe person, I'm now a strange man in a hallway with her 4-year-old, and mom is nowhere to be found. And now it's on me as the adult to be a good role model and to be a protective figure for this child. And luckily, I was so uncomfortable. He smiled at me, and I just pressed myself against the side of the wall in the hallway and just slid around him he wasn't there. And he did the creepiest thing. He didn't talk. He just kept smiling and not breaking eye contact, which for a 4-year-old is scary when the child is not yours. When the child is yours, it's oh, this is sweet and loving. When it's somebody else's kid, it's like The Omen. It's like Damien is in the hallway with me. And I remember getting back out to the living room, and the little kid, he followed me out there, and it was just awkward. It was super awkward because he wanted to play with the guy who was around, which was me. And I was in the mindset of like, I'm coming to hang out with her. And now the child is here and I don't really know what to do. And I was young and relatively immature and I wasn't ready to be a dad.
Yeah.
And she knew that, which is why we didn't make it.
But I will say, on a positive note, just because you're a single parent, that doesn't mean it's the end of dating.
No, not even a little bit. Like my mom and dad, they divorced when I was like 6, I think. And they both remarried. And I have beautiful family members. My mom's been remarried for like 18 years and my dad's been remarried for closer to 25. So if they stayed together, like I would have been in a position where I probably would have been a much different man. Like I'm happy they found love separately, and I got to watch both my dad and my mom date while raising us. And it was at times like it was funny sometimes, and other times like, who's this new guy and why is he just around? There's one guy who my mom dated. I didn't plan to tell the story, but I guess I'll tell it now. He was a Marine. He was a former Marine, and he was very Marine-ish. Like he had big shoulders and he was a tough guy, brooding fella. Only 5'5". He was really small, but he was a brooding gentleman with a lot of muscles and all the goods, right? I remember hating this dude. Like I thought he was so militant and annoying, and I remember the feeling when I told my mom that like I don't like Steve. Like, Steve sucks. And my brothers felt the same way, and we were all kind of thinking it but just waiting on one of us to share it with my mom. And I remember the feeling I got when my mom listened. She was like, you know what, you guys, and she's like, the temperature check on the room, how does everyone feel about Steve? And we were all like, yeah, we'll pass. Well, this is a hard no for most of us. She ended the relationship. And I remember that feeling of how important she made me feel. Like, yo, my mom is dating this dude, and I told her that I didn't like him because he was just not nice to me and my brothers. And she ended the relationship and made me feel like what I said mattered, and that she cared about me as her son more so than like her personal romantic pursuits. And she valued it. So
to bring this full circle, you said at the beginning of this that you may be the last person to be talking about this, but I think you are the best person because you are giving the forgotten perspective sometimes, the child.
Yes. Yeah, and we're going to touch on that later on today, because so much of this is like outside of the thoughts of the children involved. And a lot of times as a parent, like, not trying to like tell parents how to parent, but you got to realize, like you said earlier, the kid didn't deserve like to be dismissed, and or they didn't decide to be here. So if they're here, they are now yours to manage and maintain and to help develop. And if you bring just anyone in their life developmentally, you can have a very tremendous impact, both positive, negative, and everything in between.
So where do we land next?
So our goal is to be able to provide some helpful, somewhat best practices for being a single parent, trying to find the person you're meant to be with. So I want to give a few areas of guidance, if I can. Hopefully folks find this to be helpful. But I want to start with being transparent and being very, very open with the people that you're choosing to engage with. So many issues in romantic involvement comes with miscommunication. So many issues with like human existence comes with lack of or deficits in communication. Presenting a relationship circumstance that's not really what it is. And I experienced this like when I was younger, like thinking, like pursuing a relationship with someone, thinking I'm like looking for like the love of my life, and then at times being rejected or being told like, hey, I'm just looking to be casual. I'm looking to be like, I'm just having fun, as people would say when I was in my early 20s, right? Like being a single parent and dating is the same. Like if you're a single parent and looking just to have fun, I'm not judging, but I am asking a tremendous question is, why? If you're parenting takes a lot of energy, and having quote unquote social fun, so to speak, only in the context of being intimate or romantic with people, to me, that runs the risk of bringing a lot of different individuals around your children. So if you have a great reason for it, then cool. But if you don't, question mark. But bigger than that, using technology to your advantage. So being a mom or dad, I imagine, is hard, especially because time is of the essence, usually, or limited. So if it's so limited, like, don't be afraid to use social media. Like, I've known many a mom or dad who've dabbled in Tinder. And obviously, I know Tinder can be a very, Tinder's like a big city, right? You can go to the worst neighborhoods in that big city and really, really struggle from a companionship standpoint in those really tough areas. But you can also find beautiful parks. You can also find really nice people in that same city. It just depends on where you spend your time. So like social media and or online dating apps don't have to be the bane of your romantic existence. They can be helpful. Like a tool, like a hammer, is nice if you build a house with it, but if you bludgeon someone to death with it, like, for sure, that tool is no longer viewed the same way. Social media or online-based dating is very similar, just a tool. So build your house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just use it properly, represent yourself properly, because if you're putting something out there that's not you, your matches aren't going to be interested in the person that you're presenting, because that's not you.
100%. My cousin, I won't say her name, and hopefully she never hears this, but she has 8 kids. She has 8 kids. Like, I say it again, she has 8 kids. And for me, as a person who does not have 8 kids, I remember as a kid growing up, we're not that far in age. We're like maybe 6 years apart. And she has 8 kids.
We didn't stress enough.
Yeah.
8.
8. Otto, if you're Italian. She has a lot of children. And I remember as a kid, as a teenager, I would like see her going to clubs. And I would wonder, like, even as a kid, like, who's babysitting all 8 of these kids? And or who is actually, like, is she going to these nightclubs and representing herself as a mom to 8 kids? Or is she presenting herself as a single bachelorette who's looking to mingle? And because I know her, I know that she was probably the latter. And I'm not judging her, because she's my cousin, she's my family and my friend. But I do recognize that there's a context there that was like missing. One of those forgotten voices that you talked about before. 8 forgotten voices who were, at least in the amount of times that she spent seeking quote unquote love, maybe at the nightclubs, these 8 kids were not being considered.
See, and then also we talked a little bit about the financial burden. I'm just thinking, how much is a babysitter costing for 8 kids?
and not to like throw shade on my cousin, but that's if the babysitter was even there, and or if it wasn't grandma. So it just depended.
But hey, still possible to date, even with 8 kids.
And that's the beauty. It's possible so long as you introduce it properly with the people you're possibly maybe meeting at the club. So if you meet someone at the club and you have 8 kids back at home, and you tell them you have 8 kids, and they're like, cool, I was actually like looking to be a father of 8. I wanted to be the next Octo dad, you know? Like, if you find that, then that actually works, and the compatibility is there. But if you don't, and or if you don't present it as such, and then you pull someone in and reel them in emotionally and or romantically, like outside the context of having a family that big, then that's not fair. And you're setting yourself up on a foundation that's made out of sand and not cement. Yes.
But what else are we, hitting on?
So prioritizing in the context of your dating goals, the family system as a whole. So you can still pursue dating as a person who has kids, like we talked about, the octo mom of my family, who has 8 kids and was single and pursuing. But doing so with intention is the way you do it successfully. Like, anyone can do it. Like we said this like before, there's a lot of things you can do that aren't really helpful. For dating, doing it with intention is a means of helping yourself not hit setbacks in the road, but then deeper than that, actually helping your kids. Because whatever you do as a parent is going to have an impact on the self-esteem of your child. And it sounds dramatic, but literally every single thing you do, like, children remember everything. Like, I remember and this is embarrassing, but I remember my dad, he used to call me, I never thought I'd say this on the air. My dad he had a pet name for me when I was a kid. He used to call me Fuzzy, because I'm lighter toned skin, and my hair on my arms and legs were all blonde. So like he liked to make jokes about me being fuzzy and blonde, and he had other like cute names that my mom then coined and continued to say until like I'm like 32 now. I'm not gonna say the other names because I don't want to already embarrass myself enough.
Hey, I live to this day with my nickname as Cookie, because Brookie Cookie.
Okay.
That's always what it was. So you can't outlive nicknames, especially when they were given to you by your parents.
For sure. And truly, like, those things I remember. Like I got that nickname when I was like 4 or 5. When I was super young, before preschool. But I remember, and as a parent, recognizing that everything you do dating-wise, your kids will remember. And if you prioritize them, not like my mom did for me when she was dating Steve, and we said that we didn't like Steve, and my mom was like, well, Steve's out of here. Like, I appreciated that, and it helped me from a self-esteem standpoint because it reinforced that, like, my feelings mattered. As a parent, that's your job.
And I think, in a way, this also is a great opportunity for the kids to see how dating works and how relationships, and you can either set a very positive influence on your children, or you can go out and look for people who aren't in the same things as you are, and your kids are going to pick up on that. They pick up on a lot. Everything.
Intimacy and or dating, courtship, if you will, we know it based on observational learning. We know it based on what we see from our parents. Even when we try not to repeat those same cycles or mistakes, if we're not intentional, we do it anyway. And if you're not like careful, you might portray some really awful dating practices like to your kids. In the celebrity world, there's so many people who discuss like how this process is played out over time. This is kind of a weird example, but Hugh Hefner, right? So Hugh Hefner, he was the Playboy owner, Playboy Mansion owner. Like, he was the guy for like 60 years in Hollywood, in that area. The reason why I bring him up, because some of the Playboy bunnies he had in the mansion had kids who were also in the mansion when they were dating Hef. Now, these women were in their 20s and 30s, and Hef was in his 70s and 80s. And the kids were now around watching this dating dynamic. And in many ways, if you watch the documentary like I did, in many ways, the dating dynamic of being, at least in this situation in LA, as a 25, 30-year-old with a 5 or 6-year-old daughter, now dating a man like Hugh Hefner with 5 or 6 other women dating at the same time, and portraying a family system in the context of the Playboy Mansion that is not necessarily the most conducive environment for raising a child. All they did in many ways was present a context in life romantically that wasn't healthy and or sustainable over time. And I know this because one of the young girls who were like 5 and 6 in the 90s, years old in the 90s at the time, was on the documentary explaining that perspective, how she was like in her 30s struggling to date because all she saw from a dating standpoint is mom dating old Hugh Hefner. And I'm not saying Hugh Hefner wasn't cool. I personally don't like him as a guy, but he wore a lot of velvet, which apparently makes him really awesome and a very highly coveted item in the romantic market. But for that young girl, it impacted her life, and it really set up a dating standard that was really unrealistic.
And I think as a parent, it's important to know what that standard that you're setting for your kids. I'm not sure if you've seen this on social media, but it's a thing that keeps showing up in my feed where it's like a cartoon where a guy's pretty much telling his wife, like, hey, I'm ready for a divorce and I just, want to get out of this marriage. And she says, okay, I'll give you your divorce on one condition, that for the next 30 days, you have to carry me through the doorway in front of our son so he can see, like, this relationship. So throughout this, him going and walking her through the door, holding her through the door, the son is seeing it, and it's like, oh, look at mommy's holding, is being held by daddy, and like the kid is picking up on these things, and it turns out to be tragic in the end because the mom like ends up dying because she had 30 days left to live.
Oh my gosh, what a sad story. Is this real?
It is. I mean, it's one of those, cartoons, but it really does show that, like, the mom's intent was, hey, like, I know I don't have long to live,
sure,
but I do want to leave a good impression on my kid.
Sure. And that's a really, really sad but beautiful, loving story. I actually so my mom, I said before that she's been remarried and been married for roughly 17, 18 years. I remember every single boyfriend she had. Every single one. And I remember their names. I remember what they liked. I remember how they treated me and my brothers. I remember everything. But the biggest thing I remember is that my mom did not quit until she found love. Mm-hmm. And she didn't stick around when she didn't find love. Whenever she met someone and they would date, she always introduced them to us in a very intentional, stepwise manner. So it wasn't always like, hey, this guy is just around and we're going to just meet him because he's at the house. It was always a very formal process of meeting the guy she was dating. And usually she had been dating them for 3 to 6 months before we even knew they existed. Mm-hmm. And I remember all of these people, but I do remember the fact that when she wasn't happy or when she wasn't enjoying this situation, she was like, you know what? I'm out of here. Like, she really instilled that in me, that you don't, for your own happiness, you don't have to shortchange yourself mm-hmm. to pursue your own happiness, and you don't nice guy your way out of your own love. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, growing up, I remember encountering these situations where I was like, I'm not really happy romantically, and because my mom would leave, I know what that looks like, and I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about on the air multiple dates I've been on where I've gotten up and left. In the middle of the date. Some dates who've asked me to leave, rightfully so, for many different reasons. But I remember my mom not giving up on her love life mm-hmm. while also still raising a bunch of young boys. And obviously, and I'll probably make my mom cry saying this, but I have a PhD. So in my mind, my mom, you did a great job. And you found love. And I love Tony, my stepdad. He's a good dude. And I remember the feeling I got when I met him was like, bro, this is the guy. I like him, and he seems nice, and he likes me, but most of all, he loves my mom, and he treats her right, and he treats us right by proxy. And it stuck with me for the better part of my life now as a 32-year-old. 17, 18 years is pretty much my entire existence. It mattered.
Mm-hmm. And I think, just, again, another point at there, kids pick up on a lot of things. So the fact that you're saying, you even picked up, this is the guy, that says a lot. So don't settle because, they're good with the kids. No, because the kids even know.
Yeah. And my mom cared to ask. Mm-hmm. Before me giving my opinion about this guy being the new James Bond of our life, she was like, what do you think about Tony? And I was like, well, how much time you got? Because I got a lot of good things to say about this man. And I know because the last few guys were not him. Mm-hmm. And he stands out. And my brothers gave their opinions. They were older than me, so their opinions were more nuanced and mature. But they still had a voice, and that voice mattered. And it wasn't the end-all be-all for her decision, but it was a strong contributing factor as to whether she wanted to connect her life and her family system to this guy. And that guy's been my stepdad for coming up on 20 years. And it mattered to me. Mm-hmm. I did, and in the earlier, I guess, segment of the conversation, I wanted to mention that there isn't a start point for this that exists when the child is 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. You can be considering whether a person is right for your relationship or your family, even at before birth. Mm-hmm. I know this because this is in my younger days. I was trying to be progressive, and I saw a woman who was probably, I'm not assuming this because I found out later on, but she was about 8 months pregnant. And she was really pretty. So I walked up to her and I talked to her for a little bit. And I got her number. And I remember walking away thinking I just got a number from a single pregnant woman who is very obviously showing. And I'm doing this to expand my horizons romantically. This was when I was single and younger. But I remember after texting for maybe a week, she made her priorities really clear. Mm-hmm. She was like, I'm pregnant and the father is no longer in the picture. What do you think about this? And my immature response at the time was I don't think much about it because, I'm not the kid's dad. And which is a horrendous, in hindsight, like, it's not, it brings me no pride to say that. Her response was beautiful. It was, well, thank you for your honesty, but I'm looking for somebody who actually cares about the parental side of things and not just dating me. And she was like, I would rather us not go on a first date, which was best for her kid who was unborn. And for me, because it was a hard boundary for me as well to, like, hey, maybe I'm not the person for her romantically, because she is on her way to having a family unit that I'm not ready to be a part of. And she did this before a child was born. And it stuck with me, again, because I had never gotten a number for anyone who was 8 months pregnant before, so it stands out. But it was a true indication that she valued her family system.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, we are to final thoughts.
So if you take anything from this last hour, take the idea that you can pursue love when you have kids. It's not impossible. You have to do so with effort and intention. It's not work. Work is something you clock out of at the end of the day. As a parent, it takes effort because you can't really go away. It's your duty to be there for that child or children. That being said, if you're intentional about it, you can pursue love just as effectively as anyone else who's single without kids. If you do so, value the perspectives of your children and recognize that the people who you bring into the life of your children will influence them from a self-esteem standpoint, from a safety standpoint, and from an emotional and or romantic development standpoint. If you prioritize those things, you give yourself at least a fighting chance as a parent, but more so even as a potential suitor or partner in a relationship. If any of this has sounded amazing or fun or interesting or even somewhat humorous for anyone listening, please follow us on DNA of Love on Instagram. That's DNA_of_love, or just DNA of Love, all one word, on TikTok.
Just can't show love. You just said I showed up. Boy, respect your elder. I'm a fucking grown up. From them told me go nuts. From them ain't for no number. No talking that dinner or to bacon that eat donuts. Something on the come up. I might share my bonus. Cases of coronas and my marijuana. I'ma face a hold up. Roses for my soldiers. Tell her hate to hold up. Them niggas gotta show love.